Try to remember a very familiar moment. Not when you had a big win, not when you blew an account, but a very ordinary afternoon. You sit in front of the screen, no entry, no exit, just watching price move. A green candle appears, your heart beats a little faster. Price snaps down a few pips, you hold your breath. Price jumps back up. You feel something very hard to name. Not exactly joy, not exactly fear, but you cannot take your eyes off it. You tell yourself, just watch a little longer. 5 minutes pass, 15 minutes pass, an hour passes. You are still there, not entering a trade, but also unable to close the chart. And if you are honest with yourself, you will have to admit something very uncomfortable. There are days when watching price move is more attractive than making money from it. This confuses many traders because they don't understand. They have learned strategy, they have a plan, they clearly know there is no need to stare at charts all day. But then, they still do it. Not because they are stupid, not because they lack knowledge, but because something very primitive is being activated inside their brain. And if you have never been addicted to watching price move, you will not understand this feeling. But if you have, just hearing this much, you already feel a slight tightness in your chest. Because the problem is not in trading, it lies in how the human brain reacts to movement. Humans are programmed to pay attention to things that move. In nature, what stands still is usually harmless. What moves can be an opportunity or a threat. Price on a chart is not just numbers. It is continuous movement. It flickers. It changes. It never stands still. And every time it changes, your brain receives a very small signal. Something is happening. No need to win. No need to lose. Just the fact that something is happening is enough to keep you there. This is why many new traders can sit watching charts for hours without feeling tired. Not because they are hardworking, but because their brain is being fed with continuous stimulation. Every pip that moves is like a light tap on the nervous system. Very light, but repeated long enough, it becomes addiction. The dangerous thing is, this feeling is not loud. It does not explode like a big win. It does not hurt like a loss. It is subtle, soft, pleasant, and because of that, very hard to recognize. I have seen many traders fall into this state. They open charts in the morning, leave them there, not trading, no setup. But every time price spikes, they lean slightly toward the screen, exactly like someone watching a movie. The problem is, the market is not a movie. Movies are designed for you to sit and watch. The market is not. But your brain reacts to charts as if watching a vivid form of entertainment. And when trading turns into entertainment, everything begins to shift. You no longer wait for signals. You wait for feelings. You no longer ask, is this set up in my plan? You begin to ask, is price moving? Right here, the boundary between trader and gambler begins to blur. The scariest part is, many people think they are addicted to entering trades. No, they are addicted to watching price move first. Entering trades is only the natural next step after the brain has been stimulated long enough. Like a person who watches food for an hour. At that point, eating is just the consequence. If you are reading this and it feels familiar, stay calm. This does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you lack discipline. It only says one truth. You are using an extremely powerful tool, the market, to stimulate a brain that was never designed for it. And if you do not understand this mechanism, you will fight yourself every day without knowing why you always lose. There is a truth very few traders are willing to face. Sitting and watching price move is not a random bad habit. It is a biological loop, and this loop operates even when you never enter a trade. The human brain is not designed to evaluate probability. The brain is designed to track change. In trading, every tick is a change, and every change, no matter how small, creates a very short signal in the brain. Something new. This signal is not strong enough for you to call it excitement, but it is enough to hold attention. Just like scrolling social media. You do not need an amazing video. You only need the next video to be different from the previous one. Charts are the same. One candle does nothing, but a sequence of candles does. A sequence of candles creates the feeling that something is unfolding right now, and your brain loves right now. When you watch charts long enough, your brain begins to associate. Price is moving. I am doing something meaningful, even though in reality, you are just sitting still. This is the first trap. Your brain equates busyness with value. You feel you are observing, analyzing, monitoring. But the truth is, most of that time adds no real edge at all. It only adds stimulation. And stimulation always has a cost. There is a very dangerous point that experienced traders often overlook. The more you understand the market, the easier it becomes to believe. Watching a little longer won't hurt. Maybe I'll notice something. This feeling comes from experience. But this is exactly when experience becomes an excuse. Because the brain cannot distinguish whether you are watching charts because of a plan or because of stimulation addiction. It only knows eyes are watching, price is moving, dopamine is dripping, not exploding, dripping. And dripping dopamine is the most addictive form. Not too much to satisfy you, not too little to bore you, just enough to make you stay. This is why many traders feel restless when they leave the screen, not because they fear missing opportunities, but because their brain has become accustomed to that steady rhythm of stimulation. Like when music suddenly stops in a silent room. Nothing is wrong, but something feels missing, and the brain hates the feeling of missing. Once accustomed to watching price move, the brain raises its demands. At first, just opening charts is enough. Later, you start zooming into smaller time frames. M15, M5, M1. Not because the setup requires it, but because there is more movement. More movement means more stimulation. This is a very silent transition from trader to price watcher, and from price watcher to someone who cannot tolerate stillness. When price goes sideways, you feel uncomfortable, not because there is no opportunity, but because there is nothing to stimulate you. And then, in that state, a very familiar action appears. You enter a trade, not because of a clear signal, but because you want something to happen, just a little profit, or a little loss. As long as there is a feeling, many traders think they enter trades because of greed, but the deeper truth is, they enter trades to end the emptiness of watching charts with nothing happening. A trade becomes a way to create artificial movement. And here is the key point. When you are addicted to watching price move, you are no longer trading the market. You are trading your own neurological state. There is a very bitter paradox in trading. The longer you sit in front of charts, the more you feel you are working hard. But results often move in the opposite direction. Not because you became worse, but because your brain has changed its goal without you realizing it. At first, your goal was to trade well. Later, the hidden goal becomes maintain the familiar stimulation, and when the goal changes, every decision that follows shifts with it. You begin to pay more attention to short-term price spikes. You react faster, but think slower. You feel in tune with the market, but in reality, you are only sensitive to movement. There is a very specific phase many seasoned traders have passed through, the moment when you no longer fear losses like before, but you also no longer feel joy when you win. You just feel empty. And in that emptiness, the market becomes the only thing that makes you feel something. Price rises, you feel alive. Price drops, you feel you exist. Even losing trades bring a feeling. At least they make you feel yourself. This is a deeper layer of addiction, no longer just dopamine addiction, but addiction to emotional activation. Trading at this point is no longer a tool to make money. It becomes a way to regulate mood. A sad day, open charts. An empty day, open charts. A day when you don't know what to do next in life, open charts. And because the market always moves, it is always ready to receive you. No judgment, no rejection, no telling you that you are wrong. Just quietly moving. Many traders do not realize they are using the market to fill an inner void. They think they love trading, but what they love is the feeling of continuous stimulation. And this is where many people begin to deceive themselves. They say, I watch charts to learn more. I observe price behavior. I am training market feel. It sounds reasonable. It sounds professional. But be honest, if it is learning, why after hundreds of hours watching charts do results not improve? If it is deliberate observation, why can you not clearly remember what you just observed? The problem is not that you learn nothing. It is that your brain is no longer in learning mode. It is in stimulation consumption mode, like a person who watches hundreds of videos a day but cannot remember a single one. Not because the videos are bad, but because the brain is saturated with signals. When the brain is saturated, it does not store memory. It only reacts. And traders who react a lot always lose to traders who wait. This leads to the second dangerous consequence. When you are addicted to watching price move, your tolerance for boredom drops sharply, and good trading requires a very high tolerance for boredom, waiting for setups, waiting for confirmation, waiting for the right timing. But a brain used to stimulation will interpret waiting as pain. It begins to whisper, "Enter a little earlier. This time is different." This feeling is familiar. It must be right. That is not intuition. That is the brain asking for another dose. And every time you obey, the addiction loop strengthens a little more. You do not notice immediately. But after a few months, you find yourself entering more trades using smaller time frames, placing tighter stop losses, feeling more exhausted. But results do not improve. Not because the market became harder, but because you changed roles from opportunity hunter to stimulation seeker. The first thing you must understand clearly before talking about solutions is a slightly uncomfortable truth. You cannot quit watching price by simply telling yourself, "Stop watching." Willpower does not defeat biology. If you only try to force yourself to close charts, turn off the computer, leave the screen, your brain will resist. Not loudly, but persistently. You will feel restless, feel something missing, feel uneasy, and sooner or later, you will return. The real solution is not immediately watching less. It is changing the role of charts in your brain. You must teach your brain again one thing. Charts are not a source of stimulation. Charts are a work tool. To do this, you must break the loop of watch, react, feel with structure, not emotion. The first step is very important and sounds so simple that many people ignore it. That is, clearly separate analysis time and non-analysis time. Not sitting there and watching, not opening charts for fun. Either you analyze with purpose, or you do not open charts. No gray zone. When you open charts, you must immediately answer in your mind, what am I looking for? Not, let's see what price does, but which price zones, which scenarios, under what conditions will I act? If you cannot answer, the chart must be closed. It sounds rigid, but this rigidity stops the brain from treating charts like toys. The second step, and the one many traders resist most, reduce small time frames as much as possible. Not because small time frames are bad, but because they feed addiction very well. The smaller the time frame, the more movement. The more movement, the denser the stimulation. If you are addicted to watching price, M1 and M5 are like strong coffee. They wake you up. But drink constantly, and you shake. When you force yourself to analyze only on H1, H4 daily, the brain will protest. It will say, too slow. I see nothing. What if I miss something? That is a good sign. It means you are withdrawing stimulation. And when stimulation decreases, the brain begins to return to true observation mode. You are no longer dragged by every tick. You begin to see structure, context, logic. At this point, charts are no longer entertainment. They return to their true role, a map. The third step, very few people do seriously, but extremely effective. Limit chart watching time per day. Not limit number of trades, not limit losses, but limit watching time. For example, 30 minutes of analysis in the morning, identify market context today, trend, range, or high volatility. Mark key price zones. Prepare action plans. If price reaches zone A, then what I do. If price reaches zone B, then what I do. If nothing happens, then I do nothing. After 30 minutes, then close charts. 10 minutes mid-session check. This is not the time to reanalyze everything, just check. Has price reached my plan zones? If yes, then execute the plan. If no, then close charts. No extra drawing. No changing bias. No searching for trades just because bored. After 10 minutes, arrow leave the market 10 minutes end of day review. Not to see how far price moved, but to review yourself. Did I follow my plan today? Did I enter trades outside my system? Did I open charts outside allowed hours? You are reviewing behavior, not profit, because profit is only the consequence. Behavior is the cause. At first, you will feel like you lost a part of your body. But after a few weeks, something very strange happens. You begin to feel less tired, enter fewer random trades, wait more easily, and see the market more clearly. Because your brain is no longer saturated with signals. And when the brain is not saturated, it can finally learn. A very real example. A trader once told me, before, I watched charts 8 hours a day and still lost. Later, he forced himself to watch charts only 1 hour per day in total. 3 months later, the number of trades dropped nearly by half. Win rate did not change, but profit increased. Not because the market became easier, but because he no longer traded to satisfy feelings. At this point, a very big fear usually appears. It does not shout, but it is persistent. What if I watch less, I lose my market feel? This is a question almost every trader has asked themselves, and this question keeps them trapped in addiction. Because market feel sounds like something very precious, something that only comes when you stay in front of the screen long enough. But pause for a moment, very slowly. Be honest with yourself. The market feel you think you have, does it help you? Enter fewer trades or more. Be more patient or more rushed. Follow your plan better or break it more often. If you answer honestly, you will see something clearly. The so-called feel you are afraid to lose is actually making you worse, not better. This is the biggest illusion of traders addicted to watching price. They confuse being familiar with the market with being stimulated by the market. Being familiar means understanding context, understanding the larger rhythm, understanding when to stay out. Being stimulated means reacting to every small movement. These two things are completely different, and the paradox is, you can only build real market feel when you watch less, not more. Because real feel does not come from watching more. It comes from comparison, comparing scenarios with outcomes, comparing expectations with reality, comparing decisions with consequences. Those things only happen when you have distance. If you are always glued to charts, you have no distance, only reflexes. Now, speaking of the offer in the most practical sense, what are you really giving up when you reduce chart watching time? Not opportunity, not money, but instant stimulation. In return, you gain a calmer mind, slower but more certain decisions, fewer trades but higher quality, and, most importantly, you regain control. This is not a tactic. This is a way of living in trading, and to reduce psychological risk when applying it, you do not need to do everything at once. Just try one small commitment, one day. Just one day when you open charts only at scheduled times, do not zoom into small time frames, do not watch for fun, do not leave charts running in the background, not to make money, but to observe yourself. Observe the restlessness, observe the urge to open charts, observe the voice in your head. Just open it for a moment. The moment you see that, you have already begun to step out of the loop, because addiction is strongest when invisible. When you see it, it weakens. And one last thing before closing this loop, if you believe good traders are always in front of the screen, then you are looking at the wrong model. The most sustainable traders are not those who watch charts the most. They are those who can walk away without anxiety. Now, return to the beginning. That afternoon. The glowing screen. Charts moving. You did not enter a trade, but you also did not leave. If you look again with new eyes, you will see something very different. You were not monitoring the market. You were searching for a feeling. Not the feeling of winning, not the feeling of being right, but the feeling of being stimulated, of being pulled in, of being alive inside movement. And the moment you realize this, power begins to change sides. The market no longer pulls you. You begin to see that you are being pulled. The difference between two types of traders is not in strategy. It is in their relationship with charts. One person opens charts to work. The other opens charts to feel. The second person is not weaker. They just have not yet seen that they are using trading to solve another need in life. When you understand this, many things naturally fall into place. You no longer scold yourself for lack of discipline. You no longer try to force yourself to become someone else. You simply ask the right question. Why am I opening the chart? If it is to analyze, do it clearly, briefly, with a beginning, with an end. If not, you close it without guilt. And that absence of guilt is the sign of a mature trader. Trading does not require your constant presence. The market does not reward staring. It rewards clarity, patience, and the ability to stay out when there is no edge. When you stop being addicted to watching price move, you will notice something very strange. Charts become quieter. Not because volatility decreases, but because inside you is quieter. And from that quiet state, every decision you make is lighter, less reactive, and more aligned with who you are. Trading then is no longer a chase for emotions. It becomes a profession where you step in, do your job, and step out. If there is only one thing you should carry with you after hearing all this, it is this. You do not need to watch price move to become a good trader. You need to understand why you want to watch. Once you understand that, it will no longer control you.